Lauren, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So quick intro. Where are you from? How did you get into this whole crazy world of business management?
So I'm actually from here, so that made it a little easy. It was just growing up in Nashville. I didn't grow up around the industry, though. I did start working for a CPA in Brentwood here in town right after school, and I always knew I wanted to do accounting. So that's kind of where I started. It was like, let's get into that industry. And I worked for a CPA that did accounting and tax returns, but he had business management clients in the office. And so that's really where I felt called and just kind of started working with them and loved the creatives. Like there were other clients that we had too. They were all great and loved them all, but the creatives were who I was drawn to working with. So that's kind of how I ended up in this world, was just kind of starting with working with people that, did creative things.
So you had the option to manage business for any type of people, and you chose the most disorganized.
Yeah, the most complicated.
How in the why in the world was that? It had to be a calling, right?
It is. It's definitely a calling, but it's also who you are drawn to, like people that you enjoy working with, and that was definitely where I just kept coming back to. That was the people that were creative, and I could have relationships with them and conversations, grab coffee, like they respected what I had to say. That was something else I found really rewarding, was like, hey, if I give you advice, like you do it or you listen to it. Like a lot of times creatives are looking for that. Like they didn't go to school to be accounting majors, and they didn't go really probably take any business classes at all. So they're really looking for those people in their life to speak into those areas of their business. And so I think that was one thing that just drew me to them, was just that they were hungry for somebody to help them. So.
Yeah. It feels like for creatives listening out there, it probably feels like a black box of like, what does business management even mean?
I wonder the same things. It's all the things. I mean, I think it obviously started out with accounting for me. I was an accounting major, actually went back and got my master's in accounting. So that's definitely, the X's and O's, the debits and credits, all of that is definitely where my foundation is. But it turns into so much more. So like when you're talking about the difference between a business manager and just a regular accountant, most just regular accountants are going to do, the journal entries, the bookkeeping, and we do all of that stuff at our office, but it takes it a step further. It's, health insurance, we can talk more about that later, but as far as like benefits for yourself or retirement or, bringing on people based on what kind of financial goals you have in the future. So it's more of it's a seat at your table. So as far as all creatives can kind of decide who they bring to the table. And for every artist or songwriter, producer, it can be different. But for your normal artist, true like touring artist, like you're normally going to have manager, business manager,
Well,
agent.
maybe you can talk about that too. What is the difference between a business manager and a manager?
Yeah. So your artist manager, in my opinion, is your most important hire. If I ever am talking to somebody that's kind of up and coming, that's my number one. I'm like, you've got to make sure that you hire the right artist manager for you. They are going to be in the front seat with you the whole drive, and getting them out of the front seat is very difficult. Like there's sunset clauses. We can talk about that stuff too, but it's they're an expensive hire. They're going to be the highest commissioned person on your team. And they're really the one that's going to help you drive the ship. So like I always tell artists, like you should be the one kind of guiding which direction we're going. But at the end of the day, like your manager's the one that's driving and helping you get there. So artist manager is going to kind of be the one that's right there with you, kind of leading all these relationships. Business manager is going to be more a glorified accountant, basically. We're going to be doing all the money. But then, like I said, there's a lot that comes with that. But we're working really closely with your manager. We're working really closely with your label or your booking agent, the rest of the team. So I would say that's the gist of it, is accounting plus other, all kinds of other things that just kind of fall between manager, business manager. We just kind of figure it all out on the team. Yeah.
Well, that's a great explanation of it. Let's talk a little bit about managing finances as an independent creator, because a lot of people listening to this or watching this are probably independent artists, producers, songwriters.
Yep.
And we know that the finance piece, again, is not always the most fun for people to think about, but it's super important.
Right.
So let's start with, what are some of the most common financial mistakes that you see independent artists managing their finances coming up?
Yeah. Oh, it's tricky. I mean, I think the most complicated and difficult part of this, like you already kind of mentioned, is the ups and downs of this world, this industry. You're not on a salary. You're never going to be on a salary in the music industry, and learning how to budget off of that is really tricky. So the thing I see clients make the biggest mistake with is thinking that this season's going to last forever, or blowing that advance that they get, not being strategic, and realizing that every season is going to pass. So, working with, I have a client that, we have clients that are at every point in their career, and just helping them manage it at this point, but then also remembering, like, you're not going to be at this point forever. So how do we make sure we set you up appropriately in the future? And how do we help you budget in this season? Yeah.
That's great. I love that you brought that up, because really music, probably more than anything else that I know of, is very lumpy.
Yeah.
It's up and down, it's peaks and valleys. So how can musicians and people who are entrepreneurs, they are their own boss.
Yeah.
How do you manage cash flow when it's like, okay, you might get a big check and then 3 months there's nothing, and then you might get another big check and then 4 months there's nothing? Like, how do you manage cash flow in that?
Yeah, it's tricky. And I think for the easy answer is we try to level it out as much as we can. So we may say, if you've been in the industry for 5+ years and we're pretty consistent year over year on how much money you're making, we're going to try to get you to live month to month off that average, or a little under, so like if you average a certain amount, we're going to divide it by 12, go a little below, and be like, okay, let's try to basically live off of this a month. So if it's a month where you make 5 times your monthly average, it doesn't matter. Like, we're still living off your monthly average, and kind of setting the rest of that money aside. So we try to do things like that. I think as you are a growing artist, one thing we kind of learned during COVID was trying to diversify. So like, we had several clients sell their catalog during COVID to buy real estate or do other things with that money, so that all of their money wasn't tied up in the music industry, because we did see it fluctuate so much during COVID. So, for beginning artists, the biggest thing you can do is try to level out those ebbs and flows as much as you can, even if that means just sitting that money in a savings account and then you just take like your monthly draw out to live off of.
So is multiple streams of income, like, is that a pretty important thing for managing that?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's where you've got to kind of look at yourself and see kind of what else can I be doing to generate income. I actually talked about this a little bit at your
at the boot camp.
Yeah. About just, it's always so important to build relationships in this industry, and sometimes it can be hard when you're starting out to do that. And so one way is just to even get plugged in somewhere where you can get some consistent income, to start building relationships. I think at the time I mentioned, I had a client that was trying to start out as an artist and just kind of struggling with kind of getting their foot in the door places. And she started helping out with K-Love's podcast. And it was like, okay, like, here's a way I can get connected with people at K-Love. I'm an artist and I want them to see me as such, but I can do some part-time work for their podcast and get paid something consistently, and start to build relationships in the industry with people that I don't really know right now. Right. So I think that it was a great thing. And that season's passed for her. Like, she's releasing music now and, is talking with labels and stuff. So like, that season has passed, but it was a way for her to start building relationships in that season and bring in some income.
Yeah. And I think that's something that people have to realize, is that especially if you're, a starting out songwriter, it's going to take a long time for your catalog to build up to the point where it's actually like earning. I mean, that is the good thing about publishing and writing, is once you do build that catalog, it lasts for a long time.
Yes.
But it can take years to get there.
Yeah,
exactly. So you have to sometimes do stuff that, like you said, maybe even outside of your direct passion. Like, it might be working like on a podcast or something like you mentioned, or it might be driving DoorDash, or it might be whatever it is.
Yeah.
But finding those multiple streams of income, and really, even over the years, as I've seen, as we've seen, even those fluctuate, right?
Right.
I mean, one of the things that me and my wife did early on was the real estate thing, and there was years where that was great, and then there's years where it's not so great. So it's just, but they all kind of balance each other out.
Right.
Thankfully.
Yeah. Yes.
So I love that you hit on that. So let's talk. You hinted at this earlier. Health insurance is such a big, huge black box for a lot of people. How do independent artists, musicians, writers set themselves up for good, like a good health insurance plan?
It's good as to be determined.
Good is relative.
It's tricky. I would say that's probably one of the trickiest parts, especially that industry has changed a lot since I've been working in the music industry. Early on, it was really easy to kind of just go buy a health insurance individual plan with a broker. And then government things changed and we have different options now. So now, obviously, going through the healthcare.gov is an option. It's going to be based on income, so there can be some great options there for people that are kind of getting started. It is what it is. It's okay. Obviously, employer benefits are always going to be a little bit better than healthcare.gov, but they're, you got to have an employer that's paying for those, and most independent artists aren't going to have that.
Yeah.
So healthcare.gov is your best option. For performing artists, as you get bigger, there's SAG-AFTRA that will offer benefits based on how much you perform and things like that. So that's something that performing artists have available to tap into. So
have there been any? I know there's a lot out there in the Christian world of like Christian Medishare and those types of things. Do you have much opinion on how well those work?
I mean, I definitely have. I know one client that is using that. I haven't had much information from him directly. Like he kind of handles that on his own, but it's been great for them. I think it all depends on your personal health needs and your family's health needs. Yeah. Just to make sure that you're comfortable with that decision. But I think in the right situation, it can be a great option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is tricky though. I mean, to empathize with people out there, it's not an ideal system.
No,
for sure.
No, we're still figuring that out.
We're all figuring that out, and you're helping people navigate it. So I want to hit a little bit on the why of all of it, because really that's underneath this whole conversation. That's underneath the why you do what you do.
Yeah.
So why is it so important for artists to get their finances in order, not just for their own peace of mind, but also to ensure that they can provide for their loved ones and create a long-lasting legacy?
Yeah.
You see how I wove your business?
Yeah, that's actually kind of where the name comes from. But I would say, as far as why is business management important, I think it depends on sort of the area of the industry. I think touring is the part that comes in. It needs to be done sooner than later. Like hiring business manager is probably more important than when you're a producer or songwriter, just because touring, there's so many different payments flowing in and out that you've got to make sure are happening. I mean, it's funny. Whenever I'm meeting with a potential new client, I'm talking to them, especially when they're touring, I'm like, you still have to make sure you get paid after every show. Maybe not you, but
somebody does.
Somebody does. And I mean, it doesn't mean that the promoter was a bad person or any of that. It's just that things fall through the cracks. And I mean, I can tell you right now, I'm still tracking down money from 2 weekends ago, or a month ago. I mean, I think right now we're okay, but it happens where like something happens with the show and they didn't pay back end. And if business manager, most artists are not going to be able to stick with following up consistently on something like that. And it's going to fall through the cracks. And so I think that's another thing that comes up to like, when do you hire a business manager is when you can't do it yourself, you know? And so when you talk about your why, it's because it's your money. Like that's why we're doing this. It's your job. You got to get paid. That's why you're in the industry, is to make money. And so if you're not keeping an eye on it, then it's not just going to always come in automatically the way you think it might. And paying people, making sure that the people that are getting paid appropriately, the right rate, that you're keeping up with their tax information, and that you're, keeping up with their 1099 information and sending them the right tax documents so that you're staying compliant. So all of that is happening behind the scenes. And then, like you mentioned, legacy and like kind of building off of that. So making sure that in your budget, you are saving for the future or strategizing for how we want to maybe retire or maybe just at least have something to pass on to your children. But just building that estate for your family is so important. So just making sure that that's a constant thing that's in front of you, because when you're living. You know, you're not always thinking about 20 years from now. So that's kind of our goal, is to come beside you and say, hey, like we've done the monthly budget and we've got extra funds. Like what are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? And like kind of what do you see your financial plans for the future look like?
Well, I love it. The name of your company is Legacy Business Management, for people who don't know. And I think it's such a great name, because that's what so much of it is about is, we have what we have, but what are we going to leave behind? What are we going to pass down? And money is such an emotional thing, and helping people kind of manage even the emotions of it has to be a big part of your conversations.
Tricky. Yeah, it's tricky. It's funny. I'll have clients be like, so is this like a marriage counseling session? I'm like, yes, basically, yes. It kind of is, you know, but helping, you know, because even spouses may have differences on like what their goals are for the future. And so just kind of helping them get on the same page, and how do we make sure that we are meeting everybody's goals, you know, based on what makes them feel comfortable. Because I'll say, even in my marriage, like my husband and I are very different. My husband's a banker, so he's very much like, I want to see a retirement plan and, you know, have the 401k and all of that. And I'm very much like, I want to see, you know, something I can touch. And so that's kind of what we talk about with real estate. Like, I love the real estate side of things, and but he really likes the more conservative investment approach. So it's kind of, you know, meeting clients in those situations, and like, how do we figure out how to do both, or how do we get to where everybody's comfortable and it's diverse and it feels, you know, like we're a little more risky and a little more conservative, and meeting all of those needs.
Well, and if anything, that's probably, in your situation, that's probably a good thing. Just spreads it out and diversify everything.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so that's a good transition into planning for the future and investing. That's a big part of what you do, and you help. So what does that look like? Do you have a sit down with the client, and, you know, if they're married, obviously it's probably like a couples thing. You mentioned it was kind of like couples counseling. What does that conversation actually entail?
And I'll say that one of the main times we do this is when a client is getting it in advance, or selling their catalog, or there's a large sum of money, or they're a new client to me. So, okay, let me get to know you guys and kind of let's figure out the roadmap of where we're heading. And
real quick too, just to pause, selling your catalog, maybe just explain for people who aren't familiar with what that is.
Sure. So, you know, as you're writing songs, you are creating a catalog. So it's an asset to you. It's something you can sell. It's like a house. It's a piece of real estate. It's an asset. So basically, depending on the market, just like the housing market, it goes up and down. During different seasons, your catalog's worth more or less. Obviously, it's based off how much it earns. You're normally going to get a multiple of your annual earnings. So when the market's really great, you could get a huge multiple. If the market's not great, the buyers aren't out there right now, it might be a smaller multiple, but it might still be worth it based on your personal needs to still sell no matter what the market looks like. But
so, for instance, if there's a songwriter that's making, let's say, $100,000 a year on their catalog, they may choose to sell. If it's a 4 or 5 multiple, they may make $400,000 or $500,000 doing a catalog sale. And isn't there a tax advantage to doing it that way as well, too?
Yeah, there are some tax advantages. For me personally, I think I go back to the diversifying. So there's definitely tax advantages, but I think there's also the biggest advantage is diversifying your income, because now you're able to take that money and do something different with it.
So put it into the market or real estate or something else.
Yeah, something else. And then start again, right? Because you're always building a new catalog. Right? So then you're just starting over, and you can even choose not to sell the whole catalog. You know, you could pick just certain songs that are performing really well, but you know that this song is about to perform well, but it hasn't been. So you don't want to sell that yet, because you know that the earnings in the past don't really justify the value of the song. So I've had clients do that too, where they're like, I know that this song's about to do really well, or I have a feeling that there's some sync deals coming soon, and I want to make sure that I keep that
hang
one.
On to it.
Yeah. So I think that's always, you know, there's always going to be tax advantages or disadvantages to certain things. And that's definitely a piece of why we make some decisions, but we always want to make sure overall that it's a good decision for the whole financial picture too. Yeah.
So when somebody is getting an advance or selling a catalog, you're sitting down with them.
Right. Let's come up with a plan.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's figure out what are those long-term and short-term goals? You know, are you guys trying to buy a new personal residence in the next couple of years? So we don't really want to lock it up in a retirement account, the bulk of the money. Or are we wanting to like you said, like we talked about real estate or whatever. There's so many options, but just kind of figuring out what does everybody want to do? What do you want to see in 20 years? Like, what do you want to see your retirement portfolio look like?
So it's as much about the personal side as it is about like their business is what they're doing.
Yeah. Because the reality is it's got to be exciting for you, like it's got to be motivating. So if it's something that, some clients feel better about looking at a retirement account and seeing tons of money in that, and that helps them sleep better at night. Some clients feel better about seeing their assets be used in different ways. So I think it's just a lot about, you've got to be motivated to grow that, whatever that is.
Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. Let's even talk about somebody who, maybe is in a more just, I don't know, not to the point of selling a catalog yet, or not getting a huge advance. Maybe they're an independent artist or producer or writer who is doing decently well, and has a little money to kind of start setting aside. Maybe they've budgeted well, they're living below their means.
Yes.
What are some basic tips for them to kind of start investing in your future? And this is not investment advice.
No,
put
I'm not
out there.
And also that is one thing that, going back to what a business manager actually does, is kind of, I bring those people to the table. So when you are ready for investments, we would bring in a financial advisor. But I'd say if you're kind of starting out, I think the biggest thing is you've got to start with something. I was actually just talking this week with a kid that my husband used to coach, and him and his wife just kind of are getting started, and they wanted to get on a call about their personal budget, and we were just kind of talking through things. And I was like, you've got to start with saving something. Like, put something aside every month. For us, what's worked really well is a high yield savings account that's not at your bank. So for us, we use Sallie Mae. A lot of times it's going to be a bank that's not, a brick and mortar that you see everywhere. Like, you want to use something that's kind of loaning money, because they're going to pay higher interest rates on their savings accounts.
And what would be like an example interest rate?
I mean, probably like around 5%.
Okay, which
for
is
a bank
pretty
account.
High for a savings account.
Exactly. And you just have that money go over there every month automatically. Something you're not even thinking about, and just let that start to build.
Well, that just automatically keeps you in front of inflation.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's good.
Right. And if it's in your savings account in your bank, you can very easily touch it and be like, I think I do kind of want that $100 to go out to dinner tonight, But if it's at a bank where, it takes 24 hours to get to you, that gives you 24 hours to be like, do I really need to make that transaction?
Right.
So
it makes you be more intentional, and
exactly.
not just impulse buying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you obviously need to have, for emergencies, you want to have funds available, but it gives you some time to actually think about if it's a need or a want, so to speak. So,
well, and that's a form of investing too, is having that emergency fund. I mean, do you subscribe to the, Dave Ramsey 6 months?
I did that. I would say we read several of his books early on in our marriage, and I think he has some really great points. I think one of my biggest pieces of advice is that every dollar should have a name on it before you get it, which makes it a little tricky in the music industry. For those salaried people out there, that's great advice.
Much easier,
when you get a paycheck, you know where it's going. But, kind of like we were talking about earlier, if you can kind of get that monthly set budget of, hey, I know I'm going to make at least this amount a month, $3,000, $5,000, whatever that is that you can live off of, and just really set that monthly budget, then I think that if every dollar has a name when you get it, then you're not blowing money that looking up and where did that money go.
And what does that actually mean?
Sure.
Every dollar having a name, is that just having a budget, categories, all of those types of things?
Yeah. So, when you have when you get your monthly amount, or kind of however you're budgeting, just saying, okay, like, I already know what's going to happen with that money before I get it, so that we know we're going to put this amount in savings. We know we're going to live off of this amount for groceries and meals. And that way it just holds you accountable more than anything. Yeah.
Is there a good app recommendation that you like to recommend to people to use to track all those things?
I don't really have a good. I feel like I should know that. I don't have a good app. I think there's a lot of options out there, and I think the best app for you is the one you'll use. And I think that's where it gets tricky, because people are like, oh, well, this is the top rated. Well, if you're not going to use it, it's not going to do you any good. So whatever app you'll actually use, and it's got to be easy. Like, make sure it can link to your bank account automatically, and because the more work it is on you, the less likely you're actually going to follow through with doing it. So making sure it automatically updates, and make sure it's something that you'll actually use to hold you accountable.
Yeah. I know Mint and Rocket Money are two really good ones.
Yeah.
We've had good experience, honestly, with both. So can
Yeah.
definitely recommend those. Let's talk a little bit about the LLC side of things.
Yeah.
How important is it for, musicians, artists, producers to have their business run through an LLC?
Yeah. It's, that's a situation where every client's different. And I highly recommend you get legal advice, which this is not. But I think for touring artists, it's going to be sooner than later. Touring is the riskiest part of the business.
Because you might be able to, have somebody get injured, sued, like lawsuits and those kinds of things.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So that's definitely the time when you want to start to separate the LLC business side of things from your personal assets. Also, obviously, if you have personal assets, if you have quite a bit of personal assets, that's when you want to start to separate business from personal, just to start to create that, what they call the corporate veil. So just trying to make sure that your personal assets are protected from the business and vice versa. And then, from there, it really just kind of depends on, you don't ever want to overcomplicate things. Because again, going back, like if you're not going to follow through with things, then it's not doing the purpose.
Right.
So when you set up those entities, you want to make sure you're going to be in a position to really, truly be able to keep business and personal separate, or else
so have
it
separate
doesn't matter.
accounts, separate credit cards, separate everything.
All the things, and keeping the books separate, like really trying to. So that's where a business manager does come in to help you with get all of that set up, letting you know when an attorney needs to be involved, especially if there's a partnership. Starting to kind of make sure that all of those things are set up appropriately, and then not only being set up appropriately, but then being ran appropriately moving forward. Like you don't want to mix and mingle the personal and business.
Yeah. What are some of the best, and this obviously the answer is always going to be, it depends, but in terms of like tax deductions, that's something that all artists, producers, writers are looking for. I mean, what are some of the most common ones that people might not think about, they might overlook? Yeah,
I definitely think office in the home is going to be a big one for people that obviously work out of their primary residence. If you do not have a set office, then you can deduct portions of your household bills. Check with your tax professional on that, of all the things that you can write off. But there's quite a bit. That's a really big one for people that work out of their home or might have a studio space in their home. Another one would be, your cell phone. That's something that you use every day, and we don't have landlines anymore. So like that is your primary way to communicate with other people in the industry. So a large portion of your cell phone bill is something that you would be able to deduct. Mileage is another one that, when you're going to, even to a coffee, like if you're going to get coffee with somebody that you're going to do a co-write with in a couple weeks, like driving to and from the coffee and and actually paying for the coffee is a write-off. So and that's where, trying to start to separate business and personal can be super helpful to make sure you don't miss those things. So like, even if you're just early on starting out, like just having a separate bank account or credit card that you use for all of those things, like every meal with someone in the industry is helpful, because you're like, okay, because you're not going to remember in 6 months that you had coffee with somebody, you know? So just starting to separate, like, okay, I know I'm going to only use this credit card or this bank account for business activities. And so that's the biggest thing, is just making sure you don't miss them, the things that you already pay for.
Gotcha. To wrap up, what's one piece of financial advice that you wish more independent artists knew?
I think the biggest thing is just making sure that you are collecting all of the money that you can from royalties. And like, it's amazing to me how like I'll even meet with a new artist and like they don't have Sound Exchange set up, and you're like, okay, like that's a whole nother revenue stream that's out there that we need to get going and get set up. And it may not be tons of money, but it's sitting there. So I think that's the biggest thing that is important for you to discuss with your manager or whoever's on your team, to make sure that all those revenue sources are tapped into, and just make sure you're maximizing those things. And even with touring artists, I think that's one thing that comes up a lot, is like, you may be starting out as a small artist, and your guarantee may not be a lot to open for the show, but let's maximize this opportunity. So maximize the merch sales. Let's maximize the opportunity that you're in front of all of these fans that are your target market. So like think about, this is all a business. So how are you maximizing every opportunity that you're given to perform in front of these people or write with these people, whatever you're doing? Like, how do you make sure that you're building that relationship to where, all those fans, they may be here for the opener this time or for the headliner this time, but how do they come next time when you're the headliner? Because you've made them a fan of you while they were in front of you. Or that co-write, like how do you make sure that like the next time they're setting up a co-write, they're like, oh, we need to make sure that so-and-so's in the room. Like, how do you make sure you're making a lasting impression on, so it's not necessarily, it all comes back to money, but it starts out with relationships and how are you building every opportunity that you're given in front of fans or, other people in the industry.
Yeah. I love it. So good. Let's end with a quick lightning round.
Oh, man.
First concert you ever went to?
So I think it was actually Sammy Kershaw at Opryland.
That's a good start.
Yeah. Growing up in Nashville with Opryland, there were lots of good.
Classic Opryland.
Yeah.
The Opryland was pre my time here, so
yeah, it's a great theme park with lots of country music.
Yeah, never got to see it. Favorite Nashville coffee shop?
So I'm actually gonna go down to Franklin because that's where we're at. Elroy's in Franklin is my favorite.
Yep, got the Australian representing.
Yes, absolutely.
One tool or habit you swear by?
I'm going to go back to that. Every dollar has a name. I think that's something that financially is just so important to have a plan.
Yeah, I love it. Best career advice you've ever received?
I don't even know that it was meant to be a career advice, but I don't know if you know Pastor CZ here in town that he came and spoke at church and he was really talking about life, but he said, work like it depends on you, but pray like it depends on God because it does. And I think that was so important for me because it helped me remember, like, I've got to show up every day and work really hard and love my people really well. But at the end of the day, it comes down to God and the opportunities that he puts in front of me. And so I think that turned into really big career advice for me.
Well, that's just great life advice. And that's I resonate so hardcore with that. And I think all of us as creatives, as entrepreneurs, we can feel the pressure of providing for ourselves, for providing for our family, for providing people that we care about. And it's always such a great reminder to remember that, at the end of the day, all of this, it comes from God, but we partner with him and we do the work, and he, it ultimately all comes from his hand in the first place. So I think that's a great way to end the discussion and hopefully a great encouragement for people.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Lauren, can people find you anywhere? Website,
really.
Socials?
That's the great thing about business managers is we kind of fly under the radar. I do have a landing page. It's just Legacy Biz MGMT, short for management. So legacybizmgmt.com. So we do have a landing page, but we like to fly under the radar. So
and people can kind of email you from there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Made It in Music podcast. And be sure to check out our other episodes where we unpack hundreds of hot topics with some of the top music industry pros, both here in Nashville and all over the world. Subscribe to make sure that you automatically get future episodes and leave us a review if you loved it. It would really help us out. Or send an email to support@fullcirclemusic.com if you have ideas for how we can improve the show. If you would like to become a Songchasers member and attend our training sessions live, head over to joinsongchasers.com to learn more. You also get additional exclusive training from music industry professionals. You get our royalty-free custom tracks from Seth Mosley. You get song reviews from me and my team, and you get access to a custom social media network we created exclusively for songwriters and musicians. There's nothing else like it on the internet. Head to joinsongchasers.com to learn how to join and check out madeitinmusic.com for more content and episodes from this podcast. See you in the next episode.